On today's episode, I'm going to be speaking to Aoife Anastasia. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
Pretty good. Nice and sunny here in Canada.
Nice. Weirdly, it's nice and sunny here as well.
What? How does that happen?
I know, it's incredible. Anyway, my traditional first question is...
Oh, I know.
Aoife, what do you do?
I know, this is a question for the ages. It's like, what have I done and what I'm about to do, I could talk about, but what do I do it's a great question. To sum it all up, I guess I'm a creative channel, if I had to use something fruity. I work in a lot of mediums, and I'm a constant chameleon, fitting into many different art forms, and I've had a lot of iterations so far, as I am containing multitudes, as they say. So yeah, I don't fit comfortably into a label or a profession. But I guess I could say I've recently been on stage in London for the past 20 years, doing West End musical theatre performance and writing my own musicals and directing and producing my own theatre productions, and being a freelance photographer. And then my spiritual CV has coaching and readings and trance channeling and leading ceremony, teaching psychic development and astrology and all sorts of things.
Right, cool. Right.
I don't know anymore.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's go back to the start then. So
okay.
What's your sort of early memories to do with, what you could look at and go, oh yes, the journey has already started at this point?
Do you mean artistically or
spiritually?
spiritually?
Anything that comes.
Well, I mean, what is funny, and probably because I'm with you and we've been doing some awesome magical songwriting stuff, but I was writing small shows for myself pretty much from birth. Like I was a loner, no surprise, but I had an incredible collection of invisible friends that I would put little musicals on, usually about saving nature, saving animals, different realms and magical creatures, which is, I really haven't changed a bit in that sense. But I did a lot. I wrote a lot of little songs for myself, little plays. When I got a bit more confident and had friends, I would push them around the schoolyard, teaching them choreography. I was on the theatrical path very quickly. In fact, my first sort of proper audition was in kindergarten. At the age of 6, I ran out of kindergarten and there were auditions for a children's show happening in the gymnasium. And I just blasted out of class, burst into the gym singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star at the top of my lungs. And they sort of had to take me because I was so precocious. And I did my first tour as a backup singer for Bob Schneider, this Canadian kids entertainer. I think, between 6 and 8 years old. And then I was just on stage, and my parents, in their infinite generosity, were helping out a local opera singer who was down on her luck, paying her way through her opera training, and had her move into the attic. And as part of her rent, they had her teach me and my sister basic singing, languages. And so maybe like a young gymnast, I had opera training from 10 to 21 with the same person, living 24/7 kind of focus and attention. So I went into the singing path hard, and even kind of without questioning it, because I had the gift. I'm sort of built for it, even just physically. I have the wide rib cage and the sort of bone structure that you'd want for that kind of singing. So it's almost like I was genetically engineered to sing. So I really took to it. And I love telling stories. That was the passion. And I was always known as an acting singer. I won a lot of competitions, a lot, because the other girls would make pretty sounds, but I'd come in with a character with a
Yeah.
story, with an urgency, with a darkness, with a lightness, and I had range from a very early age.
Yeah.
So I loved competition. I missed a lot of school on the road, singing. Um, yeah, so that path pushes you pretty quick. I remember like really 10 to 21. Luckily, I went to an arts high school, which looks something like Glee or Fame, somewhere in the middle, but not gritty. Like, there wasn't really. It was a very wholesome, very, very art obsessed place. So I was lucky to be wherever I landed. I tended to blossom if there was creative opportunity that didn't have limits. So even in high school, I was an acting major, singing major, and a visual arts major because I could never decide, and a dance minor on the side. Like it just, if I feel contained creatively, I get really agitated. So, so the teachers, bless them, just sort of let me create these multi-creative, multi-dimensional things and drag my friends in and create little shows. And I was always doing 16 things at once. Like I look at my schedule now and I'm like, how did I have the energy to do any of that? But yeah,
there's a lot of interesting themes there that sort of lock into a lot of the interviews I've done.
Yeah.
In the last few months, actually, this sort of thing of the school just letting you get on with it, which is very. I can't see that happening now. Certainly in the UK, it's a different sort of world. But I think that's such an important part of when somebody's got their direction.
Yeah,
it's there. Once they know what their direction is because the direction's sort of leading them, if you see what I mean.
I do think part of it is my parents came to Canada from Ireland, 1969. Didn't know anyone. Came on their honeymoon, forgot to go back. They were legal, but they built everything they had. I do have that first generation immigrant sort of, if you want it, you make it thing. And I wouldn't say the high school, like they just had to get out of the way because I really believe you get out what you bring to anything. And a lot of the people didn't get what I got because I brought it. And I only just recently realized that the preschool I went to, they actually built, funded, paid for, found the house for, because there wasn't one that existed that they liked. So they made one. So it is part of that. I come from a family of pioneers, entrepreneurs, and just epic people. So I did have a sort of, I came out of a slingshot in a way. Now that I'm realizing more what they made when they got here and how much they struggled and how many jobs they had, and they just created work for themselves when they were made of nothing. So I do have to sort of really lean back on that and be grateful that I got that mentality, So
yeah, I think that's these they're very powerful influences, even though you don't know they're there. If you see what I mean. It's not until you get older and you look back and you go like, oh, okay.
That's not normal. Nobody else's parents built a preschool.
No, it's amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're already organising your own shows and stuff before you left school. So what happens? What's the next sort of?
Well, opera school I went in at 18, which is very, very young to be singing about really in-depth life experiences that you've had no experience of. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the voice is quite young for that, to get that weight, that heft, the passion you need to actually explore those issues is like, oh boy. And I was not sheltered from the world in the usual way, but I'd been living in an art bubble. So I didn't really have the passion to give. Like, I was singing the role of Mimi from La Boheme at like 19 going, oh, okay, I think I can relate to this. Yeah, so I think I trained so hard, and so I was so focused so young. I didn't really stop to think like, do I love this art form? Just because I can do it, I don't know if I should be doing it. Like, I never kind of stopped and thought, because we were the train left the station so fast. So I kind of found myself in opera school, and I'd been a natural performer. So I didn't really have to practice. I didn't really learn. I just kind of did. It was just one of those things that just leapt out. And suddenly in opera school, it was such a shock that that the love wasn't the fuel for the engine. It was judgment, it was pressure, it was competition. Like divas didn't usually bother me because I'm fiercely competitive against myself, and really no one can be more critical than me. So it didn't touch the sides, but until around 21, and suddenly I'm surrounded by piranhas in this sort of, the opera world is a world built on bullying and breaking down, and the school's mentality was, if you make it through this program, you might make it through the opera world. You might. So they were deliberately quite rough on us. And the program I'm in now is now considered a mental health risk. And the government actually interceded and have changed the program because there was so much distress, mental distress on the students. So now the program's been altered. But the time I was in it, it really was the meat grinder. And I was just such an innocent sort of, but I love this thing. And they really crushed me. They really smushed it out of me. So I dropped out early. Well, I tried for years in the training, and loved it less and less. And I had two friends who were in a similar predicament. One was a theater director, one was a fabulous designer. The three of us kind of looked at each other one day and went, well, why don't we just do it ourselves? Like, we'll learn more staging these things. Why are we here with these bitter singers and teachers who never made it in the business and are jealous of us, that want to take us down, who do not wish us well? Why don't we just leave? So we sort of dropped out in the same parachute and started doing opera productions. And within a year of producing, we were invited back as staff to the school we dropped out of.
Wow.
To stage their opera, because they were like, beautiful costumes, actual acting, gorgeous staging. You're hired. And I'm like, so looking at my pigeonhole on the wall going, that's ironic. So we had a great run of really high quality musical theater and opera. And I'm 25 and I'm a CEO of an opera company. I think I raised $500,000 in a year. Like, I'm not that person anymore, but I'm like, how did I do that? How did I manifest that? And so we were staging beautiful, beautiful things, and working 24/7 to get grants I called it waltzing for dollars. Like, I remember dancing. Yeah. I was dancing with a millionaire who made ball bearings, and he's stepping on my toes, and I'm wearing a corset dressed as an 18th century whatchamacallit. And I'm like, this is dancing for dollars. This is paying dues.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing, actually, classical music's always been based on that idea of needing somebody to give you the money.
Oh, it's
all the great musicians had to work for somebody, as being their glorified, music center.
Bach was teaching at the boys' school where he was writing his cantatas, right? And I love that thought that he had 10 of his own children, and he has a small apartment below the boys' dormitory, and he's writing all that beautiful sacred music.
I know.
Didn't have a moment of silence to himself, and I thought, and I'm complaining? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he's a hero.
Yeah, that's you're saying about that type of attitude that you experienced at opera school. It's probably true of ballet school and at the higher levels and stuff like that. And it's strange, isn't it? It's particularly when you've got or just classical musicians who, to be the best, you've got to survive. It's very, very odd.
It's, survival of the fittest, kind of.
Yeah.
Not even the fittest. Sometimes the best singers got crushed. The really sensitive, really beautiful musicians often just had to slip away because they couldn't handle the lifestyle. I think the lifestyle, if you can manage it, like I'm coming off a decade in the West End, and it's the mental health and physical health challenge of just being a working actor. It's like, I had no idea, especially coming from opera where you do 4 performances maybe after 10 weeks of rehearsal. And, my first gig was in London was Jerry Springer, the opera, because, it was legit singers. So I got in, auditioned on the Friday, I was in on the Monday, and within 2-3 weeks, 8 shows a week, singing proper opera, super C's down to like low belts. And it's like, And I remember when, I didn't have the stamina. I thought, oh, my voice hurts. I'll take a night off because, protect the instrument. And the the stage manager's like, no, you have to do this twice Friday, twice Saturday, and then you come back the next week, and that's just your life now. And I was just like, but I had no idea,
Well,
how
this is
to.
funny actually, because I do a lot of, well, not so much now, but I used to do a lot of teaching around independent schools in the UK,
Yeah.
and obviously a lot of the music teachers there are, because we're close to London.
Yeah, they're probably
The
performers, right?
singers were in Covent Garden and
Yeah.
Glide and what have you.
Oh, of course.
And it was interesting because this is when Adele sort of appeared on the scene,
Oh, yeah.
and then she started touring a lot. And somebody made a snidey remark. Some soprano somewhere made a snidey remark about Adele. And, the fact that, well, you sing like that, you're going to damage your voice type of thing. And it was like, hang on a minute. Do you know how many shows she does?
Yeah.
On the tour, right?
Yeah.
Not only is she doing all these shows, she's traveling as well, right?
Yeah.
And in the early days, she was singing more than once, effectively a show more than once a day, because she'd be on the radio, or she'd be on, or 2 radio programs, and then in the evening she'd be on some TV program,
Yeah.
in amongst gigs.
Yeah.
And I said, so how often when you're doing your performances, how often do you sing?
Yeah.
And it's a completely different world, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I go, because going into musical theater deliberately, crossing over to the other side, I got snobbery from the people
I can imagine.
but I was working all the time. I think the longest stretch between job to job for me was like 6 weeks, maybe, resting, which was very lucky and very blessed. I get that. But my opera people, they might have a few years between jobs. And they're making fun of me, and I'm like, okay, who's working?
Exactly.
Who can
Totally.
sing and dance and climb the set? And it's just. And I think the clincher, I saw Iron Maiden, I saw Bruce Dickinson, and I thought, I have no excuses ever. He's singing that every night and climbing the set and screaming with fans and jumping off things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
I
I remember being deadly impressed with that.
Totally. So you've got to this thing where you've got an opera company.
I know, at 25, I've got.
Yeah, exactly. So where'd you go from that?
Yeah. Well, that was, I think if I had a title for my biography, I think it might be Too Much Too Fast. Because when I ask for something to come in, it comes. It's like, woof, and I'm in it. I have a pretty full-on existence. So I loved it. And actually, the 2 friends I built that company with, I consider that my university degree. Like, we learned so much. We were... we had a staff of 35, orchestra of 28. We had to hire a few people, fire people. We were conned by a man who claimed he was going to build us a theater. We were sued by angry actors. Like, everything that could happen happened. We won grants, we lost grants. We were just these young upstarts, and people wished us well or really didn't. So it was a really exciting, dynamic time. And they're still my closest friends. I love those guys for life. But I really burnt out. I remember losing a grant, like a $250,000 grant on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
and
God.
Yeah. And starting the grant process again and telling the theater we'd have to wait to hold auditions. And I had a 6-month season lining up, and we were already getting people ready. And I just knew I was burnt out, and I was getting very depressed, and it was coming up to the year 2000. And I thought, this is going to kill me. And I said, if I'm going to die, I want to be somewhere interesting, not in small town Canada. So I decided that for my break, and this explains me a lot, I would take a summer course in London that my friend had just done. My friend that had been in one of our productions went to LAMDA, the London Academy of Music and Drama, and they do a summer Shakespeare intensive. And I'm like, oh, I love words. I've always had to sing them. I've never been allowed to speak them. I just want to just eat, breathe, and sleep Shakespeare for 6 weeks. That sounds like heaven. And so I day before the program, I went, oh, can I come? And they were like, well, we actually hold auditions. Will you be here tomorrow? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, okay. So I sort of blagged my way in, and I showed up, and I remember just being instantly happy. I landed in London, and I just like, I feel like I exhaled, and I was like, oh, and I knew my way around. I instantly knew my way around the tube systems and the theater land. I was just like, I've been here always, haven't I? and so I just binged as if it was the end of my life. I felt so ill, Umberta. I really did think I was going to die. So I think I saw like 60 productions in 2 months. I just saw every piece of theater, was acting in the day, playing with new friends all over London. And I just ran riot. And I really thrived. And drama school compared to opera school was so nurturing and so friendly and caring. And we had Alexander technique to take care of our bodies.
Yeah.
We were in combat, so we were in shape, we were breathing, we were playing. And I know other people were like, oh, drama school's so hard, they're breaking us down. And I'm like, dude, if you're not learning 6 languages and getting your soul crushed, this is nothing. So I really thrived in the way that when you're slightly older and have had worse, you can only appreciate. So I just came out like, whoa. So at the end of the summer program, they're like, you have to stay for the postgrad. You just have to. And I was like, yes, of course I will. So I called my theater company. I said to the guys, I'm like, it's just a year. Let's put everything on hold. The money's in the bank. We'll be all right. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, go for it. And the year of training was so joyful. I mean, Lambda is so holistic and actually so spiritual. I didn't know that. I didn't have a real spiritual outlet at the time, but the Alexander technique was kind of opening the heart and aligning the body, and the energies are kind of coming together. I didn't know it, but they were softening me up and making me so much more receptive just to life. So I was really having this huge awakening. And at the end of that year, the principal was like, well, if you don't stay and have a go at auditioning for something, you probably regret it. So why don't you give it a year? Give it a year. So I called the boys, and I'm like, okay, another year, I'll come back, put it on hold, annual general meeting. We'll come back and we'll do that production that we auditioned for. And of course, now it's a joke that every year it's like, oh, no, next year. And I say my 8-week vacation became my 20-year vacation. Up until this pandemic, I've been in London. Wow. And accidentally, they put all my stuff in storage. And it's like, is she coming back or is she not coming back? And my theater compatriots, one went on to do the Canadian Opera Company and assist the best directors in the world. And the other has become one of the head designers at the Stratford Festival here in Canada, which is prestigious and gorgeous. And he's worked all over the world with design. So the joke is now I can't afford to work with them because all 3 of us had to kind of meet our potential elsewhere, away from this tiny, if this is a tiny Amish town here, this is the fact that we have the taste and talent here. It's like, what is in the water that brought out this in so many people? So we're still really close, and we hope to have her. I actually flew back here for a reunion with that company. It's one of the reasons I got grounded in Canada for the pandemic. So
interesting.
I keep doing these accidental odysseys where I go overseas and get stuck. So I'm like, what is that about?
That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing that you auditioned for that you got?
In London? I mean, my very, very, very first audition, which was incredible, and I totally crushed it in a bad way, was I got a call, I think the day after graduation, from Lambda, from the National Theatre, and the casting director went, so my name, they've given me your name, apparently you're someone to watch out for. Can you come in on Monday? And I was just like, no, what? I don't know I forget what they were auditioning for, but I absolutely fell apart in the audition. It was so bad. I just crumbled. I couldn't even take the pressure. So it's sad, but it was like one of those amazing calls you get. One of those golden doors that opens that you slam in your own face. But yeah, I started doing a lot of Sondheim stuff. He's my favorite composer, and I have a sort of, it's my specialty. So I started doing fringy stuff and off West End stuff, things at the Bridewell, which is no longer really working, but they do beautiful little musicals. But honestly, my first proper break was I was an usher at the Palace Theatre. I was working, and the Duke of York's, like I was sort of a rotating usher on the West End. And they were taking emergency taxes. I think I lived on £40 a week. It was something ridiculous. Like I remember I was living in a closet of a friend's house and I was tearing tickets. And I was obsessed with Jerry Springer, the opera. I thought it was extraordinary. The music was ambitious. I thought it was the funniest thing. And as an usher, I was tearing tickets. And I would tell everyone, as my accidental work of magic, I would tear a ticket and say to the patron, have you seen Jerry Springer, the opera? Have you seen it? And I would listen to the discs that night as if I would have an audition. So I practiced, I knew all the words, I knew the music inside out, and I just decided I would have an audition. I didn't know it was already running. It was already going on at the National. And, I didn't do well at the National, so they weren't going to see me. But I remember just deciding, and I practiced and I practiced, and I tore every ticket with the intention that, everyone should see it and just love it. And I remember sending my CV several times, and it was sent back because Canadians are very friendly and we crash auditions and people let us, and we're a small town operation. So you can get away with a lot of non-equity. It's less pressured, right? So I crashed a few like Sound of Music, a few bigger musical ones, and they sent me away, and they were so angry, and they're like, this is not done in this country. You're very friendly and very nice, but please go away,
Right.
So I was overhearing, I was just in a cafe one day and I overheard two actresses beside me talking about Jerry Springer looking for two people for maternity cover, maternity leave. And the one woman was so annoyed. She goes, this casting director is so irritating. He'll only take your CV if the photograph is stapled exactly this way to the resume. And he keeps sending back my CV. And I'm like, that casting director has been sending back my CV. I haven't attached the photograph.
Oh,
It was that simple. So I went home. I knew who it was because I've been harassing him for months. And I stapled it just the way she said. And I wrote the letter. And I was very simple. I said, have a high C. I can tap dance. And I've been on the Ricky Lake show. And I sent it in. And he said the audacity of that letter, the audacity to say like, just be a freak and not really care and not suck up. He said that I got the job from the tone of the letter because they needed like weirdos in their show. So I got seen that Friday with a fellow Canadian, and the two of us, we were cast on the Friday, in on the Monday, no agent. No, I forgot that I'd get paid when they offered the job. They're like, oh yes, and the weekly, payment will be, and I'm like, oh my God, I can live. And just like from 40 quid to like actual living. It was mind blowing. And I hadn't done a long run. The longest run I'd ever done in my life was 3 weeks or 4 performances in opera. It was such a steep learning curve. And suddenly I'm in the Cambridge Theatre with a cast of it's a huge cast and I'm singing for my life. And it's like dream, boom, boom. But I was weirdly ready because I'd done all that. Like I'm pretending I'm in the show. I'm practicing to be in the show. I'm like ready to be in the show. And I was on stage within a week because there was so much illness and vocal fatigue in that show that I was on stage with a script within a week and a half because I already knew the music because I'd been practicing so much. So I remember that. And I remember calling home going, I think I've had my West End debut, but I'm not sure. Does it count if there's a book in your hands, So yeah, it was really cool and exhausting. And I ended up doing 18 months just straight through.
wow.
And it was Olympic. I'd never had stamina. And I actually had to retrain my voice afterwards because it got so steely and so strong from all that howling and wailing and Arabic war cries. The score is crazy. That I actually had to kind of undo. I could only sing that one thing. And swear words, I promise you, are much harder on the voice than Italian and beautiful love songs. It's like, oh, those particular vowels and consonants are hard on the body, like energetically, although I didn't understand it then, and like vocally. It's like, oh, but it was like, what a way to start. Like, talk about trial by fire.
That's an incredible story. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I had a tarot reading actually. I was kind of entering that world slowly. And I was up for Phantom to play Carlotta the month before. I blagged my way in. And the tarot reader just kept saying, "You're going to be in a show with lots of fire, lots of fire." And I'm like, "Oh, great. The pyrotechnics at the top of Act 2 in Phantom. I'm getting the job." Right. And I absolutely croaked and, crashed and burned in the audition. I'm like, "She said loads of fire. That's so mean." The reading was a lie. And then opening night, Jerry Springer, and there's pyrotechnics just blasting beside me and like demons and all this fiery redness. And I'm like, "Oh, okay. She got it right."
Yeah, amazing. That's great. That's great.
We all love cards.
So after Jerry Springer, then what?
I took a bit of a break to retrain. I was always doing other things as well, like little Edinburgh shows, and I ended up in a comedy. I ended up in a comedy troupe of American expatriates, which are really my dearest friends. Like, they're lovely, lovely people. And I was the resident Canadian and they were the Americans. So I was kind of the butt of the jokes already. And,
yeah.
I had this character where I did stand up dressed in a full beaver costume with big foam teeth and a long, lovely leather tail.
I can see where this is going. Go on, carry on.
Well, yeah, the nightclub stuff is obvious. But it was so funny because I would just make fun of Americans dressed as a giant beaver, and it was so easy to get laughs because the outfit alone did the work. So it was quite lazy stand-up, but I enjoyed that for a while and doing sketch comedy with them. But I got a weird gig from that, singing with a punk band called Butch and the Dogheads, who are this punk rock band up in, where were they? Up in North London. And they would wear big rubber dog heads. And they had a holy cow who played the theremin and a dancing horse. And they hired me as the eager diva, the opera singing beaver, right? And they would play punk, like hardcore punk. And they would say, "Sing anything you like, make it loud, make it high, and just don't match us." And I just had these huge clubs of people just going, "Beaver, beaver, beaver." Like, what has my life come to?
It's so surreal.
It was really fun.
What would the people in the opera school have said?
Oh no, yeah,
That's
not something I would tell them about.
That's incredible.
I did meet my voice teacher recently, like 2 years ago. I saw him, and I surprised him. I knocked on his door and I went, "Oh, sorry, sir, I'm 17 years late for my lesson." And he was thrilled to see me. And he goes, "Of all the people, are you still singing? Because so many people drop out. The business is brutal. People give up. They go into teaching, which is, sacred work in its own right. But yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I'm singing, but not what you'd expect, maybe." But that was short-lived. I was stuck to the West End. I ended up a lot in Sondheim Productions and Andrew Lloyd Webber, who have the same birthday, weirdly, but just the legit stuff, which made sense. I think I went on, what did I go into? Did I go into Evita next? I think I went to Evita at the Adelphi, did I tour? I did Aspects of Love and Evita, and I can't forget which one is first, but one was a UK #1 tour, the Aspects of Love. I got to see the whole country. And, I don't know England. So to me, it was kind of a novelty. Other people had toured a lot. So they were like, and that was with David Essex. So seeing the world through David Essex eyes is quite hilarious because he's he is a proper traveling man. And I'd often drive with him and he'd give me old rock star stories,
Yes, I bet they were interesting.
Oh my God. And I had the dressing room next to the man because I was playing a minor role. I think I had 16 bars of role, but I got a dressing room, which was very kind. And of course, he's smoking a lot of weed beside me. I shouldn't now. You might have to cut this.
Oh no, it's fine. It's okay.
I remember getting a contact high just being next door to him and starting to forget lines on stage. And I'm like, "Oh, this is not cool. He can handle that. I can't handle that. I'm a lightweight." So I remember once I snuck in and I sealed all the openings to his room with garbage bags and duct tape, and accidentally made like the world's largest bong in his dressing room. And the shows got more colorful, but I could breathe,
Yes.
It was very funny. He didn't mind at all.
No.
Yeah, he'd be switching off the smoke detectors and doing his thing. That's how he lives. I'd be like, "Oh my God, the amount of lyrics he made up, it was hilarious." But we got
That's
along
fantastic.
quite well. He's a lovely man, and hard worker, and sold us a lot of seats on the road because women of a certain age in regional England, it was fun. And then Evita at the Adelphi was, I think, one of the most loving casts I was in, one of the most passionate, loyal casts I was in, because you do have to deal with dysfunctional families in any theater production you're in. It's just the rule of the beast, I'm afraid. But that one, I do say with Evita, because we had an Argentine actress leading the charge, so it was very authentic. We had Elena Roger, whose parents, knew Perron. Their mother's wedding dress was paid for her by the foundation, and they had actual experience. So it was like stepping into a newsreel. It was so authentic and so well researched. And Michael Grandage and the Donmar, and it was just like, oh, that really appealed to my my inner historian, And the first thing they did with us, first 3 days, were only tango. So they put us in a big room, and they said, if you're going to be Argentinian, this is what you do. Yeah. And they made us dance with each other. So everyone danced with everyone, and the energetic bonds of that. And every man held every woman. And it was this push and pull. It never left the cast. It was so...
That's very clever.
We're still in each other's lives. Like, we still go to each other's christenings and marriages and divorces. And, it's a very close cast.
That's a very interesting psychology. Although I don't act.
Yeah.
Well,
you're a storyteller.
My whole life is an act, but
what are you talking
about? Although I don't act, I've always been interested in some of the sort of psychological perspectives that acting has, and obviously the sort of the effect that music and what you would have had in the past before we commoditized everything.
Yeah.
And of course, acting is a very, very, I'll just use the word shamanic for a better.
I was going to use it myself
because I can't really put it any other way.
Oh,
it's world changing. In if you went back in the past, it was the way you influenced the world.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of techniques that come out of acting that I find very interesting, especially people like Keith Johnston's improvisational stuff, which when you look at how that stuff can be, it's used for acting, but its applications are just so wide.
Yeah.
And you saying about the idea of getting people to tango, because that is the dance of the Argentinians, but it has this sort of really, shamanic. Again, is that word again? It's got something that happens with that dance that is not normal. A bit like flamenco.
Oh no, tango's a mind bending. It's like it's surrender. It's surrender and control. Like, as a woman, like, that was I tend to get jobs by asking for equality. So for Evita, the order I put in with the universe, if you will, was like, oh, I really want something that sends me into the feminine. Like, I really want to feel like that, like a woman. I really want to feel my own femininity. And I remember I wore a flower in my hair. I auditioned 6 months. I auditioned once a month for 6 months, and there wasn't a role for me in that show. I am not what you would call a typical Argentine anything, but I wore that flower with that. I really want to call in that feeling. And they were actually auditioning me to play her mum. And I was young. I was like 20, whatever, or just about 30, I think. I forget. Anyway, and I was never old enough to play her mother. And in the end, and they said, can you play older? Can you play older? I'm like, absolutely. With makeup, with intention, I will absolutely be her mother. It wasn't quite right. But they said, can you be older? I'm like, well, I'm older this month because you've seen me 5 times already. And they finally, in the end, cast someone proper for her mom and just kept me along because, it was just part of the spirit of the thing now. Oh no, why was I saying that? So the feeling of having a real masculine dancer like hold you in the small of the back and like letting them lead you, letting them move you around the floor is very unusual for a modern woman. Men don't don't use this technique. They're not taught how to lead, how to hold, and how to honor a woman. Like that's just not part of our collective psyche, right? So to feel that you could surrender to that masculine strength and kind of, and also take them on a ride, because you have the power within the surrender to overpower them. It's just like, what? It's so subtle, but your surrender is your power in that dance. It's quite a, and I mean, originally the dance was built in brothels for two men. Like it's actually, it was one of those dance fights that turned into something else. So there's a lot of different dynamics playing in that. It came from a very dark place, but can transform a lot of energies. And I had magnificent dancers. I was spoiled, absolutely spoiled. And I went with Elena Roger to local Malanga, and and she would be taken off around the room with every man, and she would just say to the older men, dance with her, and they were amazing dancers who've been dancing all their lives, and they just took me around and taught me how to let go, how to melt into it, and find my power within that giving way, and a lot of women fought with that at first. They were just like, oh, they want to lead, they want to,
yes.
they're used to kind of useless partners. It's really
I did
interesting.
actually learn tango for a while.
Oh yeah.
And no, it's lovely because it's definitely not my sort of thing generally to sort of learn a stand.
Good for everyone.
Mind you, there's so many possibilities with tango. Anyway, it's not like
Yeah.
It's not like you're doing the foxtrot or something, but
yeah.
But it is interesting because when you dance, like you're saying, if you dance with somebody who's a good dancer, as a woman, obviously you just have to surrender into it. But what was interesting was that one of the teachers was a woman, and she was like as light as a feather.
Oh wow.
But what was fascinating about it was that she somehow controlled your movements, even though it wasn't doing anything. It was very strange. I was always fascinated by what was going on because
it's like good acting though. It's that push and pull. It's that give and take. It's that scene is in the other person and you're in it together. It's like whoa. It's profound. Really profound.
That is it. That's good. Yeah, that's a lovely story. That's really good.
Yeah, I loved that. I was very happy in that show.
Yeah.
Well, it was also killer because it's really so much sorrow, so much pain. And, my spiritual life started to open really well. I mean, it was always there as a child, but shut down by the Catholic Church. But as soon as I got to England, the magical parts of me, just being in that, I mean, to me, England is this battery pack of magical opportunity. They just
yes.
Plug into. Canada's amazing, but it's wide open and the energies are distilled and gentle and young, and it's very different. So it's all these openings through the shows I was in, and weirdly, like I was losing a lot of weight too. I think I lost a stone for every show because I came from opera, and then all the dancing and the confidence, and it was just like the physical transformation of these shows as well was just really interesting. So and I'm in Jerry Springer, and we're invoking demons every night, and that show is so dark on the soul. Like that's a hard show, the cruelty of man to man in that, and the blasphemy, if you will. I mean, I was a good Christian girl when I arrived in England, not for long after, but it was like it was funny, the darkness of that show, which I really relished, and a part of me needed to just swear every night. Like I think we said 3,000 swear words a night if you count all the actors saying them. And Stuart Lee was actually using real magical manuscripts to write the invocations. So energetically, that show was like a kick in the nuts. It was very painful on a magical soul. I didn't know it at the time. I wasn't educated, but that threw me, the darkness of that at night, each night, threw me into a spiritual seeking in the daytime. And I just remember seeking so much light, like trying every magical practice I could find. And that sent me into really the other creative side of me, the channeling, the psychic, the astrological, all of that magical stuff, open from the dark impulse of like the demonic invocations. So yeah, that's when I remember I had 4 days off from the show, and it was around Halloween, and I decided to go to Glastonbury because I wanted to see the witches, like a Halloween tourist. And I remember showing
And what
up.
a place to go.
I know. It's like, I was definitely, Harry Potter was quite new then, but I was kind of, oh, let's go see the striped socks and the big pointy hats. And I went and I sat in a curry house on Glastonbury Main Street, and there was a group of witches in big tall hats and stripy socks. And I said, oh, happy Halloween, it's your big day. And they were like, I'm sorry, what? Like, these aren't costumes. This is our life, like, excuse me, tourist. And I remember, like, oh, okay. And I showed up at this healing retreat there, and I walked in, and the woman just knew me. She just knew me. It was so incredible. And she goes, oh, we've had so many lives together. We've been this, we've been that. And I'm like, pardon, what? Sorry. Like wide-eyed innocent. And I remember she dropped the keys in my hand. She goes, I'm going away to Egypt in a few months. And I'm like, I have time off. She goes, here you go, run the place when your show is done. She goes, I need someone to look after it. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And she goes, well, I know who you are. I trust you, darling. Here's the keys to the place. And I ended up living in Glastonbury that summer after the show was done, and running a small B&B, a healing retreat. And for this person who'd met me that, on the doorstep kind of thing, so as things happen in England, like, magic is around every corner if you bump into it, And that was my recovery from the demonic invocation. They brought in this extreme light of living on the highest point on the tour you could live on. It was like, oh, oof. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult not to be near somewhere important in the UK.
Yeah, I love it.
Right.
I love it. I miss it.
Because it's such a small place, and
Yeah.
everything's so, there's so much, there's layer upon layer of stuff.
It's been deliberately worked with. Like the land.
Oh, yes.
The land is loved by the native people if they're allowed to work with it. Of course, they've been hugely badly treated and taken away from their sacred places. But I don't know, England's got like all these, it's like a circuit board, because it's been used and used and used and charged and charged and charged. It's like, whoa, tiny place.
The interesting, where I'm sitting at the moment, because I'm a dowser, or do that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in an office, and the friend of mine is an architect, and occasionally I do some dowsing for him just to sort something out. Right?
Yeah.
But this place is next to a sort of a main road that on the map is effectively there's a sort of a ley line that runs down the road.
Yeah.
It goes up to a castle. It's a sort of mock castle, but it's a castle from the restoration period, and but there was a lot of stuff to do with the Jacobites.
Oh boy, yeah.
And they literally moved the village away from this castle house to keep the villagers away from what they were up to. So they moved an entire village by building another church.
Okay.
Right. So that's literally on this road.
Oh,
and then this road runs out to the family home of Anne Boleyn through the Ashdown Forest, which is Henry VIII's favourite hunting ground, and down through Forest Row, which is it's just got just about every strange combination of from the Scientologists to the probably Russians, I don't know, and and all of the Steiner thing going on there, right the way through. This is on the same route, right? Right the way down to Lewis, which is of course where all the important rebellions have happened. Thomas Paine lived there. It was the Battle of Lewis against the king, and so on. And you think that's one line.
Is that the famous Stane Street, the Roman road? Is it's that?
I don't think it is. No, this is.
I think it is.
I'll have to have a look at that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was called there. I want to work along that route. There's a
Oh,
lot.
okay. Okay.
It's a major energetic highway,
Yeah.
and I think it takes you to the Isle of Wight. I think so.
Well, you might be right. I'd have to. It's only from a point of view of me sort of getting some rods
Well,
out.
it's huge energy
And
to live on. It's like living next to the internet. just a huge information highway.
oh, it's incredible. I mean, you really can't escape it. I mean, where I actually live
Uh-huh.
is very close to where there was one of the biggest hoaxes of the Darwinian. This we're going to find the originators of the Homo sapiens, the
Oh, the
Piltdown Man. That's just literally down the road from me. And then the most famous herbalist in British herbalism, Culpeper, lived or
Oh,
grew
yeah.
up in the vicarage of Isfield, which is just down the road from there.
Oh my God, you're in the thick of it.
It's just like you go like,
Coincidence? I think not.
but it's literally layer upon layer of stuff. Can't escape it.
Yes, I miss it. I love it.
Yeah, I know, bonkers, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
tell me, Len, a little bit more about the magical implications of all this now as it's beginning to unfold.
Yeah, I did bring it up, didn't I?
Yes,
Well,
you can't escape it now.
I did sort of dump myself in it. Yeah, so I lived I lived a double life. I absolutely lived a double life. So I continued performing and auditioning and acting like a normal actor, West End jobbing actor, for about 8 years. But then when I had time to go, or in my holiday time and in my personal time, I went into deep esoteric study, a lot with this community in Glastonbury. So it was proper Avalon. It was I can't even explain really what we did. I don't even think I'm allowed to say, but a lot of it was mystery school work in the Egyptian tradition, definitely in the goddess tradition.
Yeah.
The community no longer exists. It actually, yeah, and nobody would have known about it. You had to know about it to know about it. But I got really, again, too much too fast. I got my priestess training, and I was on the job as Oracle, as Melissa. I was in it, doing some serious work internationally with teams, traveling to Egypt and Greece, and just like infiltrating other communities and sects, and just getting a lot of deep mystery work very, very fast, and then appearing on stage. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was in the temples of Egypt. I was in the Great Pyramid on my weeks off, my 2 weeks off from Evita, sounding and levitating in the King's Chamber for 3 hours. And then the next day I was on stage in the West End, blowing out my microphone going, oh my God, like the contrast of this is insane. And I sort of love that I played them off each other. Like the deeper the mystery went, the more body theater made me. So it was weirdly grounding to sing and dance and breathe and sweat and hurt, and then go away and do something wildly ultra terrestrial, and then come back boof into singing and dancing and clapping. And like the theater was the thing that kept me in the body, when really I could have been just away in the starry so I did manage to kind of play them against each other. I was doing a lot of trance channeling and a lot of oracle work, so they had me under a long time, just helping teams of people do works to help planetary stuff and etheric rescue and all sorts. So I had a load of adventures, but again, I tend to do this. I go in so deep and get burnout again. And so I tend to go deep and then have to come up and retrain and replenish. And so that was
It's quite interesting, the trance stuff.
Yeah.
Did you have any sort of inkling that you could do that before you arrived in Glastonbury?
No.
That was interesting then.
No, it's so funny as an actor, right? As an actor, what you do is you look for character everywhere. And I wanted weirdos. I wanted to play these people. I wanted to write it down. Maybe I'd write a play about that. Isn't it hilarious? And I'd sit back and kind of not mock it, because of course, I wasn't going to share it yet, but I was like, oh, watching the gesture and the voice, and mediumship is hilarious.
It's fascinating.
when a large woman is being a tiny Chinese man. It's just
Mm.
really amazing acting in my mind. I went in as an absolute cynic. Absolutely, this is bullshit, but it's hilarious. And I remember I tried channeling, and I would just say what everyone wanted to hear, and it was fake, and it was awful, and it was inaccurate and just bad. And my teacher at the time was like, "Oh God, okay, we'll try again some other time." And I'd put on voices and gesture, and I was acting as a channel. And I remember one day her head channel, her head girl, her oracle, got really sick with food poisoning or something. And I was like petting the cat because I was put on animal duty. I had to walk the dogs, feed the cats and the birds and the fish and all that. And I was sort of the lowly priestess in the group. And without thinking, she asked a question in the room, and something came out of me. And I said something about a sun disk on top of a temple in the coordinates of a place I'd never heard of. And I was just, it just came out because I wasn't trying. And she was like, "What was that? Say that again." She was like, "Yes." And it just flowed from that moment. It just kind of just kept coming out. And that poor girl, I replaced her because she never really did come back to channel. But and then I stepped into the sort of oracle role of that community. And then I was in. So I'd come off stage and I'd be in trance, reading people, guiding people, teaching on the weekends, being Glastonbury when I could, on stage when I could. And it was, I don't know how I did that.
It's very strange, isn't it? When
Yeah.
suddenly, because I've got a little story to tell. Because this is a similar thing from a slightly different perspective. Because you were saying that, you saw spiritualist mediums doing stuff, and you think, coming out and think it's really, it's sort of, it's acting, right?
Yeah.
So, my mother was trained to be a medium.
Yeah.
And never sort of, did it around the churches and stuff like that. She just trained, and then basically, I think I appeared or something like that. God knows, or something happened anyway.
Yeah.
But then I became interested in it because I grew up with somebody that weird stuff used to happen. I mean, like really weird stuff. Normal day, something unusual would happen. They'd say, she'd tell you things that you think, okay,
how do you know
that? Got that. And so I got used to seeing mediums working, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
So when I did a NLP course, I'm a master practitioner, but but I did one of the things that I did. It was actually Paul McKenna was running it.
Awesome.
And they got this guy, and they said, right, we're gonna do something interesting now. We're gonna put you in a trance, and we're gonna talk to your unconscious, and it's going to pull up all the details that it has about whoever it is that you want to become.
Yeah.
So this guy said, well, I'd like to become Muhammad Ali. And this guy was an Indian guy, quite a big guy, and I watched this chap literally, I'd seen it before, this trance work trance work. And it's sitting in a hotel in London on an NLP course. This guy became Muhammad Ali. I mean, there's no two ways about it. He got the mannerisms, and he started talking like it. He got the banter, and it wasn't that he knew anything about. He'd not studied him.
Yeah.
And then we did it all to one another.
Yeah.
So we got one another to go into hypnotic trances and stuff, and the experience of that was like, this is the same thing. This has got the same feel to it.
That's really cool.
So that was interesting. So that's coming from the sort of NLP.
Yeah, I did the same. I cheated once. I had a French concert to do, and I don't speak French. And I remember channeling. I accidentally channeled a gargoyle from Notre Dame. But
that's an interesting one. I've got a joke about gargoyles, but I won't do that here.
I ended up fluent in French while he was there, but I said maybe Edith Piaf would be more helpful. Why did I get a gargoyle? But the only time it tripped me up balancing the two lives was in a lovely little musical called Bells Are Ringing, this like really light 50s frothy thing. And I accidentally went into trance on stage and missed 6 lines. And I remember that was like, okay, now it's too much. I have to like start separating these things because I'm not holding the space for both. The poor actress looking at me while I was just kind of like, and I remember being furious at the powers that be going, not while I'm on stage. That's not cool. I know I'm an open channel at that point, but I'm an open channel for singing and dancing. Like, it's like not helpful.
There's that Tom Waits story, isn't it?
Yeah. Is that the
Not
one about?
now. I'm driving the car.
Yeah. Catching the tail. I'll get you later. These are my business hours. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had to learn business hours and boundaries because like training as a channel and a medium, I did train as a medium as well. Boundaries are not a thing that's really helpful in that community because they want you to bring more and more in. Or if you're badly taught, you don't get the boundary self-care sort of side of things because they're just like bigger, more, let more in, and platform stuff as well. It's just like you're open to anyone who walks up, and I just platform drives me crazy. It's not my thing. I've done it, but I don't want to do it.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
that's
so it was weird to play those things against each other. But what was cool, where the two met, where theater and my priestess training, my esoteric training, my mystery training, where it all sort of came together was when I was on tour for Aspects of Love. One of the sound guys, we're just texting and emailing, and he was looking at my turn of phrase, and he went, you're a lyricist, right? Like, you're writing lyrics in these emails. This is not how normal people speak. And I'm like, what? He goes, there's a hook, there's a hook, there's a hook. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what now? And he goes, I dare you to make an album. Let's make an album, right? And we were just coming off the road. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, we'll come to yours. We'll lock ourselves in for a week. We have nothing right now, and we won't leave until there's an album. And I'm like, and if you want me to do anything, make it a dare or a stunt, because I figure the bigger the dare, if you fail, it doesn't matter because it was ridiculous anyway. So I'm like, oh, that's ridiculous. Let's try it. So he came into my house with like oodles of instruments, really top of the line sound equipment, samples, and all sorts. And he'd made a few albums of his own of independent, like really creative music. I don't even know, techno something or other. And we locked ourselves in. I just remember that like day one, nothing came, like nothing. We sat there on my couch going, oh God, and ended up taking a walk and just looking around at, North London with nothing to say. And we ate and we sat and a lot in silence with all these instruments and this sort of thing hanging over our heads. And I woke up the next morning and I was just covered in ink, and there were words on a page, a lot about what we talked about that day and on the walk we were on. And a friend lost her baby and had texted me, and there was just songs. There were songs on the pillow side going, this is like, it's like we channeled that day into 50, I think we got 12 songs in 5 days. And it was like this cauldron between us. We reached in and it felt like we were pulling out songs, like they were already in existence, and we just yanked them out. So we got this really interesting album. We called ourselves 1117, and we started doing a few open mic gigs, and we got some airplay on radio. We got someone remixed one of them as a dance track. One track sounded like a James Bond theme song. And because he had all these like car explosions and breaking glass, and he was really like techno. He was so cool. So he took that one track, and I had the same wiki as Judi Dench in another show. So we sent that track to her going, can you get this to Barbara Broccoli and get it heard for the next James Bond film?
Right.
Because we're being idiots, right? And they got the track, and Judi Dench apparently played it in her car, and she really loved driving to it because it was like, it was like really.
Yeah.
It was very funny. So she liked it. And Barbara Broccoli sent us a really lovely letter going, we do not take unsolicited material, but, thanks for trying, kids. It's really funny. But we were chancing like that. We were just throwing it into the world. And the album, we call it 1117, and we had the Flower of Life. We had like, trying to be spiritual. And the album got into the hands of my acting agent, who is also a theater producer, a burgeoning theater producer. And he heard all the songs and he went, this is a musical, right? Like all these songs actually fit together. And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that. They were just literally stream of consciousness of that week, or the 5 days or whatever. And he goes, well, we can't afford a book. We can't afford a movie rights. Can't afford copyright. But, just write a whole new story or find a really, really old story and you're good. And come back to me in a year. I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. And I looked at all the songs and a lot of them were about growing up, coming of age, seasonal. I write a lot about cycles and seasons. I was wildly esoteric, didn't know it really at the time. And in my ignorance or innocence or what have you, I thought, oh, it's kind of like the story of like Hades and Persephone. Like it's about a young girl going into dark places, waking up, coming up. And so I thought, oh, I'll just write that. It'll be done. It'll be done in 9 months. No problem. Right. So I went into this, like the first cycle of the Elusian Mysteries, essentially the wide-eyed innocence of my naivete. I jumped in and started writing a really modern version about a young girl alone with her mom on like an eco village sort of thing, getting taken. And I did the story, the true, the surface level of the story. But as I wrote it, the Elusian Mysteries kind of bubbled up and came to get me. The Hecate was under there waiting to guide me into the deeper places. And that's when the travels and the meeting of covens and experts and academics and powerful sorcerers and ritual makers and ceremonial groups started. And I ended up just having the adventure of a lifetime over the next 7. I can't remember if it's 7 or 9 years, because you lose a few years when you live in that magical state. Again, while I was performing and living, and I went deep into the Elusian Mysteries, into cycle after cycle. And it was always like you lost something in the fall, you gained something in the spring, and it got deeper and higher every time and more extreme. And one of the losses was the loss of that collaborator. He actually,
Right.
once the Elusian Mysteries kind of came up to get us, he actually ran away. He just couldn't. Happily, he went and got married in Vegas and is a happy musician elsewhere, but he couldn't handle that deep, dark, powerful feminine that was coming through me and transforming me. Because the Elusian Mysteries for a woman is like transformation. If you're brave enough to really ride that wheel, it's like you're in it. You're in it. So I gave myself over, and even the community I was with in Glastonbury, that exploded in that energy. So much was taken away, so much was given, so much was taken away, so much was given. It just went boof, boof. The producer himself, like anyone who touched the play, went through a massive process, an alchemical process, and he fell apart, lost all the money he had, lost his wife, and then started a company. And it was just like, we all just kind of went into this huge seasonal process. And in that, I manifested a new collaborator who was just extraordinary musician. He's a concert pianist, won concerto competitions for playing Rachmaninoff at the age of 16 in like Russia. Like he was just an incredible musician, and a very bright spirit and a very pure spirit, actually quite young, like not even 30, and naive in a way that only concert pianists who spend 8 hours a day at a piano can be, in that they just haven't been out in the world as much. But just an adorable, wildly talented, quirky, Aquarian mad scientist of a musician. And I was in Sweeney Todd at the time at the Adelphi Theatre with Imelda Staunton and Michael Ball. So again, back in a dark, dark show, like, oh God, talk about the underworld. And I gained this bright, bright spirit who's like willing to come on the ride and wasn't afraid. And was kind of like, what's Greek mythology? Ooh, what are the Elusian Mysteries? Ooh, what were these people on in the ritual? Can I try some? And I'm like, whoa, okay, he's here, he's arrived. And so we started writing together, and it was a wildly magical process. And our rule was always, every step of this is sacred. If we don't write this with joy and love, like the ingredients in the stew will flavor the audience experience. Like they'll taste everything we put into this. So we had a wonderful collaboration. It was like kids building sandcastles. Like it was so playful. we had push and pull. We didn't really have conflict. I think we had one fight, like one fight ever. And that was when it came down to like big money West End sort of pressure. Because this producer was like, okay, what theater are we looking at? He got us a Broadway choreographer. We had a West End cast for our tryout. Like it was real and it was coming in. And this guy was offering thousands of dollars, thousands and thousands. And we completed, like, the fact that like the lifeblood it took to write it, because I was holding the normal human story about a young girl, going through hell, but coming back and being stronger and amazing and having awakenings. And then I was holding the mythology, the classical knowledge that people would have and all those references. And then underneath, I was holding the ritual and my own transformation and the blood and gut churning sort of remaking of a whole new person and my relationship with femininity and motherhood and my mom and oh God. So, to hold that in one system, it was like pregnancy plus. The gestation was really intense and personal. But the musical ended up very entertaining. Like the producer who watched it, who's very non-esoteric, was like, wow, this is a brand new story. I've never heard of this. You come up with this all by yourself. And I'm like, it's kind of the oldest story in the world. Like it's been done a million times. And then the classic professor that saw it from Oxford was like, oh, great. You got all the references. You got this god, that god, all the Zeus stuff is perfect. And then anyone who's magical watched it and was like, this is initiation, this is accent points, this is DNA rejigging, this is, oh my God, what have you done? And it was one of those, it was a weird experience to write it because it was very, very potent. Like I remember I was in the Adelphi Theatre writing the big number for Zeus because I had to have a bad guy. And I'm kind of like, well, you sell your daughter, you do some human trafficking, you're pretty naughty. I'm talking to the character. I'm like, I need a bad guy. Are you willing? You're not going to strike me with lightning or anything. And he goes, no, I'll do it. As long as I look kind of sexy and I have a good number. And I'm like, okay. The women will love you. And I'm going to give you a big show number. You'll feel okay. And I said to Zeus, I said, who would you like to play you? And he goes, oh, I don't know, Bill Nye or someone, someone cool. And I remember writing that number in the Adelphi Theatre up in my dressing room, looking out the window with this scaffolding. And the moment I finished the last word, because I'm just writing the lyrics, the scaffolding outside the window was struck by lightning. And the whole theater went dark at the point in Sweeney Todd where the judge sentences the young boy to death and the gong sounded. So this massive bronze gong. And they went into blackness. And I remember the stage manager going, we have a show stop, everyone. Stand by, hold your places. And we lost 20 minutes in total blackness. And the second half of the show was done with torches, basically. Wow. And we fried the grid. And I was like, okay, so this is a living, like I went to talk to an academic about Zeus as well. Or Zeus, I don't call him that in the play, but and a lightning hit an oak tree and I couldn't leave because it fell on the train tracks. And the academic's looking at me going, is this normal for you? And I'm like, this is my life now. Like this is how it works, So it was very, very potent, a little bit scary. And the Elusian Mysteries there's depth beyond depth beyond depth. And I really found like the Hecate energy was very stabilizing, and she was a very good big sister guide. Like she really held me in the darkest parts of that story. Like that double torch she carries, I was like, she's going to walk me through. And the character as well is a wonderful blues singer with 2 cigarettes who's in the nightclub going, I'll lead you, I'll take care of you, little girl, kind of thing. So we had the first big workshop and it was getting really potent and there was a lot of excitement, and the choreographer we got is world class. And he was, I heard him talking about my behind my back. He hated everything to my face, but behind my back, he was telling everyone how good it was. And that was just thrilling to hear this cynical, seen it all guy going, I want this, So everything was going swimmingly. And we were coming up to our second big workshop, which was leading to, proper launch. And we still have this big finale to write, which is the Elusian hymn at the end. If you do as far as I could discover the ritual, I mean, it is one of the best kept secrets in the universe. But so I translated from the Greek and added my own spin on it. And I remember saying to my partner, I said, okay, here's the last big hymn. I'm not going to give you, because I was quite prescriptive with him. I'm like, we need a blues with a bit, mix it with a bit of Baroque, with a bit, like I gave him a lot of direction. But this time I said, I really want you to write it like it's the thing you want to be remembered for. Like it's the last thing you'll ever write. I said, I just want to like see what you want to do. I really, and it was a long piece. It was tying up the whole story. It was 8 voices with whatever orchestration he could think of. And the words were the Elusian hymn. So it's all about never being afraid of death, and spring following winter, and breath follows breath, and there's fire within the match, and there's a diamond within the stone. And it was just really like this mesmeric, it was the holiest part of the show, the most overtly esoteric part. And yeah, and I included the libations and some of the actual ritual, as far as I understand it. And yeah, so he wrote this incredible 12-minute number, on top of hours of a theater, like to come at the end. And the moment he finished the last note, he passed away.
I thought you were going to say that.
Yeah, he ascended into the music in my mind. Just he died that night, leaving it open on his laptop, or at least completed. And yeah, and that was weeks before we were meant to have this whole new life, this whole this new thing birthed into the world that had been 7 to 9 years in the making, or maybe a lifetime in the making, or maybe several lifetimes. And the shock of it, I remember calling the producer, because we'd lost our leading girl and we were recasting. And I remember calling him saying, I have bad news. And he goes, no, we'll find another girl. Don't you worry. And I'm like, no, we've lost the composer. And, we all just kind of, life just sort of stopped. That whole future, that whole livelihood, that whole opportunity, that child that we'd been, everything just stopped. It was, and it's so like the show where, Orpheus and Eurydice, I was like, they've taken the wrong one down. Like, why did they took the musician? I can't go down and give them words to bring him up again. Like, what can I trade? They've left the one behind that's useless, and fact and fiction got very confusing, because we were in a deep magical act together in which death is our main character and fates are the chorus. Like, it got very confusing. And I was like, did we go too deep into the magic? Like, did we go to a place that was too far? Or but from the healing I've gotten now, it's like his death was on the cards, and we accidentally, for 869 days, accidentally got him prepared for a really beautiful ascension. And that just happened to be scheduled, and some part of us retroactively got him there. I don't know how else to explain it, but music is astounding. We've got this beautiful art child still waiting for an outing. It's not been heard. And in a way, maybe it's too potent, or it's still got a lot of charge in it. And that moment for me was an absolute falling apart. Like, he was, I just wanted to go with him. I couldn't figure out why I would stay. And that life was gone, and that my favorite person on the planet, my artistic other half, my husband in art, you know what I mean? And we were so deeply connected. I didn't even know until he was gone, just what I'd lost. I was like, oh my God. Because, you bicker, you push and you pull. You don't realize how close you are. And they say music and lyrics is like a sexless marriage, is what they call it, right? That's what the Gershwins and all them, they're like, we're practically married. And it's like, it really feels like that. And then you add the magic on top, and him holding that masculine paradigm, me bringing in the deep feminine, and he was strong enough and fearless enough to go to places that 3 men had run away from. Do you know what I mean? So I was, smashed open. I don't know, like there was, my limbs did not attach. Like, I became a wide open, broken thing. Like, it was such a shock in every single way, that I went into a really kind of like, the soul kind of left the body. I had sort of a little bit left that washed the body, fed the body, slept the body, was polite, had no opinions, and I ended up on stage within a month of his death. I got the best gig of my life. And I didn't even think, like, my agent's like, oh, you have an audition. And I was like, auditions still happen? The world is over. Like, what are you talking about, you ridiculous man? And he recorded me singing. It was for Assassins, the Stephen Sondheim show, which is an incredible show. And the song was called Something Just Broke. And it's about this woman seeing the death of John Kennedy. And he goes, the direction was, picture a time in your life where you lost everything and you thought life couldn't be the same afterwards. And I'm like, so I sang this song in a video camera as comatose as I was. And I got the job. And I'm like, oh my God, I've got the best cast I've ever been in. Catherine Tate was in it. I was like, what is going on? And my job was to play a comatose woman who'd lost everything, to the point where they had me sitting on a swing for half an hour before the show began on stage, staring in comatose shock. So people, apparently I was so still and spooky that people would come up and smell me, like, to check if I was a waxwork. Wow. And my job was to grieve. I was paid. I was at the Menier Chocolate Factory in this gorgeous production of really intense, fantastic actors, best show. And I was paid to be the saddest person in the world. And my job every night, I would watch all the horrible things. I would watch people being killed, hanged, electrocuted, shot again and again, and committing suicide. Horrible, like, amazing show. And I'd watch it in comatose shock. And then at the end, I would do one thing a night. I would pick up a carousel. I would walk into the center of the stage. I sang this song, Something Just Broke, about everything falling apart and the world being smashed and nothing making sense. And I did one turn where I looked everyone it was in the round. One turn, I'd look everyone in the eye, sing the world's saddest song ever, and I would walk off. And all this red ticker tape would be falling, like, just so much blood. And that was my job for 107 performances. And it's like Spirit just built that scaffolding, and they were like, we need you to be alive. We need you to stick around on the planet. You've got other shit to do. You're not allowed to leave. And here are some incredibly strong people. 11 men, I think it's 11 men, 4 women, playing these fierce, tortured, grieving people who've all lost incredible things. So it wasn't happy. I didn't have to happy, snappy, like, get my tap shoes on. I was allowed to just be an absolute train wreck. And I was like, the kindness of that for whoever's stage managing my career up there, I was like, and what was even weirder, because I'm talking about the death of John F. Kennedy. So I would go into the bar, kind of comatose after, and sit with the cast, and audience members would come up to me and they would talk to me about everyone they'd lost. So I became this sort of like confessional, and they'd go, I remember 9/11. Yeah, I remember where I was when I got the call when my father's car accident. I remember where I was. And I would just, like, receive their grief on top of mine. Like, I was just sort of like, I could take it. I just held sadness for these people. And as the priestess I am, I was doing this ritual every night, 107 times. And the soul was not in the body, but there was a presence. There was something else taking it. And I still, when I see the cast now, I don't know what to say to them, because they don't know. I think they thought I was a method actress who was always in character, but I couldn't explain to them I'd lost someone. How do you explain losing a composer? It's not like a husband or a brother or a lover. It's like, he's so much more than that. He's my other half. So that scaffolding. And literally the scaffolding came off my house the same day. So I'm like, oh, I get it. The scaffolding kept me together while the soul really had to be elsewhere. It just went so far beyond the veil. It just went with him. Luckily, I got a medicine woman here in Canada, because I flew home after that to have like a absolute, physical rest. And I had a Native woman here. She went in deep ceremony to go get me back and pull me back and go, not your time. You can't be with him. You have to be here. She sort of yanked me back and sort of threw me back in. And I remember, like a light switch, I was back in going, oh, fuck, now I have to hurt. Numb was so nice. Like, how dare you put me back in?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you're thinking, saying about native traditions, how they could deal with that stuff.
Oh, that's amazing. The healing I've got, from the people here and in powwow, and they've had me dancing in the honor circle to bring my friend with me. Like, you bring your dead, you bring your ancestors. They're awesome. They're so awesome here. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm so lucky they welcomed me. Yeah.
No, that's incredible. Incredible you telling that story. So how did you're in Canada now. Was this all just before you found yourself back in Canada, or?
No. What leads on from that was actually my extraordinary recovery came from a project that began just after that show ended, and a little recovery time, when I was really kind of in the proper pain of loss, and PTSD. I didn't know I was as bad as I was, mostly because the themes of the play got really confusing. And it was more than grief. It was like survival guilt on like a massive level. What happened when I couldn't get out of bed, sort of grief. What I could do was pick up a pen. I picked up a pen and I started to draw. And I was kind of inspired by Picasso, because he saw his best friend shoot himself in the face in a bordello, his best friend ever. And he started to paint in blue. He painted in blue. He painted the whole blue series, and then gently into rose, And I thought, oh God, I need my blue period. How am I going to get this out? How am I going to have the strength that he had, that artists have? All things spiritual went out the window. Religion went out the window. I was so angry at the gods that I'd worked with so diligently and gave so much to for years on end. I was like, spirituality went out the window, and I was just furious. But what didn't leave was color and music and light and art and creativity. And I was like, that'll be my salvation. So the first portrait I drew, I drew Frida Kahlo, because she's the queen of pain, right? She loves death. She embraces death. Is her boyfriend. You know what I mean? If you're in pain, hang out with Frida Kahlo, because she can hold that. And so I drew her badly, and I couldn't sleep at night. I was having a lot of night terrors, and PTSD was very bad. So I was up all night, mostly drawing. And in the daytime, in the morning, I'd wake up and that person would be with me. Now, you can take that as you like, in my imagination, in my psyche, in spirit, because I am a medium, so who the hell knows? But in the state I was in, which I call the state of grace, that wide open rib cage sort of blasted open state of grace, Frida came in and spent the day with me to keep me company, talk to me, keep me from doing anything stupid, and just kept me going. And then I drew again that night, and it was George Orwell. Okay, I don't know. I read his book once. What the hell? And then he came in, awkward as anything, knocking over teacups in the kitchen next day. And he spent the day with me, furious at social media and all sorts, of course. And these people just started slowly coming in, and I would draw at night, chat in the day, draw at night, chat in the day. And artists came in who maybe I knew them at one point in my life, like Aesop came with his fables. And I'm like, my dad read those to me as a kid. I guess part of me now needs that. I guess the psyche's reaching out for the moral of that story, or what the hell? These people kept coming in. I kept drawing them. The drawings are getting better. And each one, before they left at sunset, would just leave a little drop of healing, just a small, nothing outrageous. And I didn't know how long I would draw. I drew whoever showed up, and I was getting comedians, dancers, a lot of old Broadway guys, of course, all the composers I grew up with, artists, designers, everyone in my subconscious showed up. I ended up really by day 150 of this, I got into it, and I started doing it on purpose, really going, yeah, let's see who will come in. I started looking forward to it because I was getting a little stronger and a little more mentally well. And then around day 200, I'm like, maybe this could help someone else. Maybe I should do this on purpose. So I have a diary of the time of these incredible people walking in. And I ended up doing a year and a day. And the last one to come in was Picasso, because he was the patron, the big daddy, of the of the thing. He would call himself that. And
he would.
Yeah, of course. And his last message is, now you're your own artist of the day. You don't need any of us. You're good enough to go, as he would say. And so I have these diaries of these incredible times with these portraits. I had my whole kitchen was papered. They're about, normal, just normal page with Sharpie ink. There was nothing sacred about what I was doing, artistically speaking. And my walls were filled. And I drew myself and I drew my partner that passed, because we became part of the pantheon. And they would talk to me from the walls, and I know, oh, Joni Mitchell and Rachmaninoff are getting along really well today. And I didn't know, but she loves him. I didn't know that. But, they would resonate, and the mandala of who was who in my makeup and in my influences, and just they would spark off. And I remember like Benjamin Britten and Stravinsky insisted I meet Auden. I'm like, I don't want to meet Auden. Who's that guy? He's crinkly faced. I don't know. And he walks in with his funeral blues, and he's like, stop all the clocks. And I'm like, oh, I need to meet Auden. Okay, here he is. We've got him. So I had this incredible year and a day, and I've been writing the fractured diaries. Like, they're not readable. You can't just go, oh, my day with Tom Waits, which is a very funny day because I can't remember it very well, which is part of, it's quite funny. It's very Tom Waits. I sort of wake up with confetti in my hair going, where was I? What's happening? So I'm translating those now into short chapters, my day with. They're about 1,000 words. And I've done several residencies, and I'm leading some workshops on the artists I experienced. And I'm already sharing with people readings, because they're potent, pokey things. Like the artists are alive in them. It's such a channeled work, because there's nothing in the way of me and them. And I don't care if it's accurate, because it's my Frida Kahlo.
No,
it's
no.
my Vincent van Gogh. It doesn't matter if it's the real person. And I got, like, Joni Mitchell came in as the 10-year-old in the quarantine tent. Like, she didn't come as the woman now, and sometimes they would send characters and not themselves. Like, controversially, Shakespeare did not show up. So the authorship debate remains in my mind, but like, characters came. I could talk to a lot of his strong women and grieving mothers, and that was really cool. So I'm writing that book right now. I call it Drawing Strength, an Artist's Guide to Creative Recovery, and has my experiences, ideas of how you can play with your artists. And what I didn't know is that William Blake had done this himself, and Rodin had done this, and Dante. And it's like, artists channeling other artists is not that unusual.
No.
I mean, William Blake and I think, we get along famously in spirit, but like, I wish I could have really hung out with him, because he got 78. What did they call it? The heads that came in. He got like Charles the First, and and that was normal for him. They would show up at dinner, and he would chat with them, he would draw them, and they would go away. And I'm like, when I met the William Blake Society, they're like, yeah, that's what William Blake did. And I'm like, I don't know him. He was day 98. I don't know his work. He just walked in. What I mean? Yeah. So I'm channeling that work into something readable, healable for other people. Now I'm figuring out how to give it to people. So it works as a theater piece. It can be a spoken word, because I've been doing theater since I was born, and it has a visual arts component, because it has all the paintings in themselves. Could be an oracle deck, could be a gallery piece, could be a multimedia something. I have theater interest and I have literary interest. And it's like, I've got this amoebus thing that I'm working on now in the pandemic. So this is where I'm at. I've got about 70 chapters of 366, which is ridiculous, but I want to share what I have while I'm creating it, because it will probably take a lifetime to complete. And I came to Canada while working on that, and to give a talk on one of my ancestors, who's a playwright. And so February 27th, I was called over here to give a talk and go to a show reunion with that theater company I used to run. And the door shut behind me. I'm like, that worked out very well. But I remember it being a big decision, and I felt like I when you feel the probability split, and like that decision really meant something. I knew before I even got here. I'm like, what the hell's going to happen in April? Because that felt like a bigger decision than a 3-week trip to Canada. And I packed nothing, thinking I'll just pop in and out. So that's that's one of my projects right now, and my joy of the pandemic is just helping. I think the book becomes more and more relevant because we're all going to have collective trauma after this, and there's going to be massive PTSD.
I think so.
Yeah, it's like if Isadora can come in and help you dance it out, let's bring her in. Like let's channel this shit. Let's get people well, because you're going to be working your NLP butt off. I'm going to be working my channeled butt off.
Yeah, I know, it's fascinating, because I'm looking at this and thinking, well, and I said right at the beginning, plagues and stuff, they're the ways. That's the way that society is changed each time. These things.
Oh yeah, is that a thing? Like,
it's like a reset button.
Oh yeah. I hope so. Yeah. And artists in plagues are really interesting, or inventors, like Shakespeare writing the sonnets and getting out of town, getting into the pageant wagon scene, like getting theater, like he got out of that London bubble and wrote beautiful poetry, or Newton discovering gravity. Like incredible insight can come through these
Yes, it does.
giant
it stops the normal habit thinking, doesn't it?
And I've met incredible people online. Like I don't know how we would have met. I don't know. It would have happened. It's obviously inevitable, but like.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Well.
Sorry.
Quite a bit of time there.
Sorry about that.
No, that's absolutely good. That is obviously more than one episode. So that's
oh, crap.
It makes my life easier for a while, because I'm always thinking, oh, am I going to do next week? So.
Have me back and ask me about my great uncle, the Abbey Theatre playwright who worked for Yeats. That's another episode.
Okay.
That's a good one.
I will do that. That's good, because I have got a couple of ideas for the podcast, just where I interview people about somebody else.
Oh, do that with me, because he's a great story.
Okay, because I've got 2 or 3 people already, apart from what you've said.
Yeah,
that will be a very interesting interview with people that are no longer with us. But
if you want to know about any artists, you could look at my pantheon, because they're still very. Yeah, I got some dudes that you would know better than I would, but.
That's cool. Anyway, that was a brilliant chat. Thanks.
Pantheon will travel.
Yeah, that was such an interesting chat.
Oh my God, yeah.
So thank you for your time. And now I always put stuff in the show notes about what people do.
Yeah.
Because whenever I listen to a podcast, I never hear the links or whatever.
No, you can't take it in.
I'm always in a car or something like that. So send me some stuff.
Send you like a biography or something.
Yeah. Whatever works, whatever links that would take people to pages.
Oh, right. I'm flying quite under the radar at this moment. I'm about to get my act together, but
But people want to sort of be in contact. That would be great.
Yeah, sure, of course.
Anyways, and thank you very much.
Yeah, pleasure. It's so amazing when you hear it all out loud. You're kind of like, is that one life? What the heck?
Oh yeah, I know, it's bizarre, isn't it, when you start telling a story out loud and you think, oh my God, and then this happened. And I should have given you more time for questions. I'm like, story, blah. No, it's good. It's good. It's great. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll speak again with the magical songwriting, obviously.
Yes.
See you then.
Yeah.
Cheers. Well, that was different. It's always fun when conversation goes in directions that you hadn't anticipated. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that one. So details are on the show notes. So go there to find out a little bit more. And if you want to support the podcast, you can visit Patreon. Just put Vic Highland at the end of the Patreon address. Links again in the show notes. Until next time, see you then.